Hi, I'm Gary Smith. My talk today is about Scarface, Al Capone. ProQuest Historical Newspapers database had a number of period articles about Al Capone, so it was not difficult fleshing out the Al Capone story. Capone came to Chicago from Brooklyn at age 19, bearing the long scar that ran from his left ear to his jaw, and then he had two smaller scars underneath the larger scar. The scars purportedly arose out of a knife fight in his Brooklyn days as a young, tough street hoodlum. In Chicago, Capone was bodyguard to John Torrio, who had taken over the south side of Chicago crime operations after the violent gangland killing of Big Jim Colosimo. However, after a gangland attempt on his life, Torrio, concerned about his own safety, moved to Italy and retired. Capone, at 26 years of age, took over from John Torrio and began his rise in Southside Chicago gangdom. By age 29, Capone had risen from street tough to the most successful racketeer America had produced to date. With an army of Tommy gun-toting hoods that were protected by bought-off politicians, Capone commanded a criminal empire that grossed millions in bootleg liquor, gambling, prostitution, and other assorted vice. Gangland killings were common in Chicago. Over 250 gangsters were gunned down in gang wars in Chicago between 1925 and 1930. But in spite of being accused of a number of serious crimes, to include multiple murders, Capone was invariably taken into custody and then released for lack of evidence. The most heinous crime for which Capone was suspected but was never charged was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which occurred on February the 14th, 1929 in Chicago's North Side. Several members of rival gangs Bugsy Moran were lined up, facing the wall, and shot down by Tommy gun and a shotgun. Everybody suspected Capone of orchestrating the murders, but he was in Miami at the time. After the St. Valentine's Massacre, influential Chicago citizens determined enough was enough. Chicago was out of control. Chicago leaders met with newly elected President Herbert Hoover and told him that the city was in the hand of gangsters, that the police and magistrates were completely under their control, and that the federal government needed to step in and restore order. Hoover directed that the resources of the federal government be targeted against Al Capone. And the way the federal government finally got Capone was a criminal trial in October 1931 for income tax evasion. Capone was found guilty of 5 counts of evading income taxes in the amount of $182,591. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Capone appealed, but his sentence was affirmed in February of 1932. Capone's 7-year reign as a Chicago crime boss ended at age 33, when he was promptly transported to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. In August of 1934, Capone was awakened in the middle of the night at the Atlanta Penitentiary and spirited off to Alcatraz. Capone served a total of 7 years of his 11-year sentence and was released from federal prison in November of 1939, where he moved to his estate on Palm Island, Miami Beach. Supposedly, Capone was not involved in criminal activity after his release from prison, primarily because of health issues arising out of an untreated case of syphilis that he had contracted in his youth. Capone died of a heart attack in January of 1947. He was 48 years of age. Capone was buried in Chicago. Thank you very much.